Most people think navigation begins and ends with a map or a glowing screen. WWII commandos knew better. They operated deep behind enemy lines, where a map could be outdated, a compass could be lost, and hesitation could mean death. For them, direction was not a tool you carried. It was a skill you trained until it became instinct. This guide strips away modern dependence and takes you straight into the mindset and methods that allowed commandos to move with confidence through forests, deserts, coastlines, and ruined cities with nothing but awareness and discipline. This is survival navigation at its rawest, and it still works today. Why WW2 commandos treated navigation as a survival weapon, not a convenience. Commandos were trained to assume failure of equipment. If your compass broke or was confiscated, you were still expected to hit a rendezvous point within a few hundred meters after miles of movement. This forced a shift in thinking. Navigation was not about precision lines on paper, but about maintaining a constant sense of orientation. Modern survivalists can apply this by training to always know where north, south, east and west are relative to their body, even during routine movement. A practical ratio used in training was simple. For every 10 minutes of movement, you should be able to stop and point to your start point within a quarter-turn accuracy. If you can't, you're drifting mentally, not physically. How commandos used the sun as a moving compass throughout the day. The sun was not just a light source. It was a clock and a directional anchor. Commandos memorized the sun's arc for their operational latitude. In Europe, they knew the sun rose roughly in the east, peaked in the southern sky, and set in the west. But more importantly, they tracked its movement relative to time. If it was mid-morning and the sun was already high to your left while moving forward, you knew you were drifting south instead of west. A practical application today is shadow tracking. Place a straight stick in the ground and mark the tip of its shadow. After 15 minutes, mark it again. The line between marks runs west to east, with the first mark being west. This method takes patience, but offers directional certainty when everything else fails. How stars and the moon replace clocks and compasses at night. Night movement was common, and commandos relied heavily on celestial patterns. In the northern hemisphere, Polaris was the anchor. Commandos trained to find it quickly, using the Big Dipper, even through broken cloud cover. Once Polaris was identified, north was fixed no matter how terrain twisted. The moon also served as both timekeeper and compass. A waxing moon rises in the east and sets in the west, while its illuminated side roughly points toward the sun's position below the horizon. A practical rule used was this. If the moon is high and its bright edge faces right, the sun recently set in that direction, giving you west. This allowed commandos to maintain direction even during long, silent movements. Terrain reading, turned the very land itself into a navigational map. Commandos, they read terrain like a language. Rivers, for example, always flow downhill toward larger bodies of water. Valleys, they tend to channel movement, guiding you along their path. Ridges, on the other hand, usually run in predictable patterns, and roads or trails often follow these natural contours. Instead of fighting against the terrain, these men aligned their movement with it, making the landscape work for them. Now, a key survival principle here is something called confirmation through repetition. If you believe you are moving north, the terrain features around you should confirm that again and again. If a river you expected to cross never appears after, say, an hour, it's time to reassess immediately. In training, we used a simple ratio: 1 major terrain confirmation per kilometre. If you don't get that confirmation, you stop, reassess, and correct your course. Because small errors left unchecked can quickly become fatal ones. Nature leaves subtle clues. In temperate zones, moss tends to grow thicker on the shadier side of trees, usually north-facing. Snow melts faster on southern slopes. Prevailing winds shape trees and grasses over time. Commandos never trusted one sign alone. They stacked evidence. 3 agreeing indicators meant confidence. 1 alone meant caution. A modern application is to consciously identify at least 3 independent indicators before committing to a direction change. This habit prevents false confidence, which is honestly one of the most dangerous navigation errors. Without maps, commandos measured distance with their bodies. They counted paces and tracked time. A trained commando knew roughly how many paces it took to cover 100 meters on flat ground versus broken terrain. They also knew their movement speed under load. For survivalists today, this means practicing paced movement. Count your steps over a known distance, then repeat under fatigue and load. Once internalized, you can estimate distance traveled within a 10 to 15% margin, which is often enough to hit a rally point or avoid overshooting a target. The greatest navigation failures came from panic, not ignorance. Commandos were drilled to stop when disoriented, lower their profile, and rebuild orientation from known factors. Last confirmed direction, time travelled, terrain features passed. This pause saved lives. In survival situations today, forcing yourself to stop, breathe, and reconstruct your movement history is often the difference between recovery and disaster. Movement without orientation compounds error rapidly. WWII commandos proved that navigation is not about gear. It is about awareness, repetition, and discipline. These methods are not relics. They work because nature has not changed, and neither has human perception. Train these skills deliberately. Test them under stress, and they will serve you when technology fails or silence is required. This is the kind of knowledge we preserve and pass on here at Survivor's Guide. If you found this guide valuable, subscribe to the channel, share it with others who take survival seriously, and keep sharpening the skills that matter when everything else is gone.